today. We apologize in advance if the tech goes all wacky and wild. We'll work with it, but if we end up just shutting it down, then hopefully we don't have to do that, but we'll send you guys out something either way. But Joanne, I'll kind of let you get to
Perfect.
it. I think you're co-host, so I'll let you kind of do your presentation up there, and then Carly and I will kind of be on the sidelines there.
Awesome. Let's get it done. All
All
right.
right.
Thanks so much for having me, everyone. Real quick about myself. I'm in my 7th year as a financial planner. Before this, I was a mortgage agent, so I knew a lot of real estate agents. That was long before the PREC. So when the PREC came on the scene in 2020, my existing clients were like, should I PREC? Should I not? How does this work? So I just kind of dug in, learned everything about PRECs back then, and then just started really educating on it to the point where last year I made the decision to exclusively work in this market. I've branded my company to be called the PREC Planners because I feel like there's a real financial literacy gap in your industry around all things financial planning, especially when it comes to being an incorporated business owner. So that's how we got to where I am today. I'm going to share my screen. Feel free to interrupt me often. Oh, that's okay. There we go. Everyone can see my presentation. Good. Okay. So interrupt through the chat, and then maybe Katelyn, if you want to let me know if there's questions there. This presentation is really interactive. It works better if you ask me lots of questions as we go. There is no dumb question. This is new to a lot of you. So and I speak fast. I do this a lot. So if you need me to slow down, let me know. Disclaimer, anything I say today, guys, is meant to be just education purposes only, okay? So don't take anything I say today and go and change anything about your financial path. Talk to your accountant, lawyer, your own financial planner. This conversation is really meant to just get you thinking about things you may not have thought about. We don't know what we don't know, right? I always start with, can you guys see even with that on there? Here, let's move that down. Okay, who does what? And again, to every time, what's the difference between an accountant, a bookkeeper, a financial advisor, a financial planner? How does this work? The best way I can position it is an accountant is someone who is backwards facing. They're looking at what did you do last year? What did you do the year before? And their sole job is to file your taxes. They're going to put their head down, and their job is to keep you compliant with the CRA. So an accountant is very much a tax person. They're looking at what you did last year, and they're filing your taxes. A bookkeeper is someone who's getting all that data in good order so that your accountant can do their job. So they're collecting your receipts, they're remitting your payroll, they're remitting your HST. Lots of real estate agents do their own bookkeeping, which is fine until you have a corporation. And I'll talk about that later. If you have a corporation, you really need to have your own bookkeeper. So bookkeeper is really a data entry, and they just keep everything organized so that your accountant can do their job efficiently. The word financial advisor, the word advisor is very generic. Kind of anyone can be a financial advisor. A mortgage agent can be a financial advisor. You can be a financial advisor. There's no legislation governing the word advisor. And most people associate the word advisor with wealth management. So managing your investments, maybe you have a financial advisor at the bank and you go and you talk to them about your balanced portfolio. And, and that's what an advisor does. What I do as a planner is, so the word planner is protected. You can only call yourself a planner if you're a CAFP or a QAFP. I just found out 2 weeks ago I passed my CFP exam, so I'll be able to fully call myself a CFP now. And I've been a QAFP for years. Anyways, and what we do as planners is we are forward facing. We're looking at, okay, what are you going to do this year, next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? What's your exit strategy? What's going to happen when you retire? What happens when you die? What happens if you can't work? How are you going to get these properties to your kids? What's your business succession plan? Where are you getting your money from? So that's what we do as planning, is we're forward facing and we're trying to put in plans to cover all the different scenarios that might happen to you in the future. Planners can also, like myself, are dual licensed. So I am also licensed to manage my clients' investments and their insurance needs. So my firm is a full service wealth management firm, but I really only take on clients where we build them plans. So if a client just comes to me and says, hey, I've got $1,000 or $100,000 in my RSPs, can you build me a portfolio? That's not really what I can, but I really take on planning clients where I'm dealing with the whole family and the whole business and looking at all the pieces of it. Okay. Next screen. All right. So I'm going to share my other screen and we're going to go through a little drawing, because I found the best way to explain this was, hold on a second camera, share. Okay. Was with the drawing. The very, very first time I ever did a presentation about PRECs to a bunch of real estate agents, their eyes kind of glazed over. And I was like, this is terrible. I'm speaking way over their heads at a corporate bank account. I was like, okay, great. Let's back this up a little bit, which is perfectly fine. So let's talk about your life with no PREC. And because I've never met any, oh, are we good? There's a notification, my internet unstable. Chat wise, good. Yeah, good.
Yep, we're
No.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, sorry. I just got a notification saying it's not okay. So your life with no PREC. So you make your money selling. Let me make sure you guys can see this. Okay. You make your money selling houses, and it all comes to you as an individual. So there's no differentiation between you and your business. You are your business is you. You file your taxes together, and when you don't have a PREC, you really just kind of have no choice. You're sort of set on a specific path, and it is what it is. So for example, from a tax perspective, whether you make 0 to 50K in a year, you're going to pay about 30% marginal tax rate. Once you start making more than 235K in a year, you're going to pay a 54% tax rate on every dollar you make over that. And the other thing too, guys, any numbers I give, I round numbers. I don't get into decimal places. So these are generic things. It's not exactly 235, but around there. From a savings standpoint, again, you're kind of limited. You have your old school RSPs. How these work, you can put 18% of your earned income into an RSP each year, but it maxes out at about 30K per year. So what this means is, if you make 100 grand in a year, you can, if you have any money left over, put $18,000 into your RSP. Once you start making more, but if you make 200 grand in a year, you can't put $36,000 into it. It maxes at about 30K a year. So they're fine. You get some tax savings, but they have some limitations. The other thing with RSPs that people don't realize is what happens when you die. So if you die and you have money in your RSPs with a spouse, all the money can go to your spouse tax-free, but on the death of the second spouse, it's taxed at your highest marginal tax rate. So what this means, if you're an agent later in your career and you've got like 500K in your RSPs and you die without a spouse, it's as though you did a full account withdrawal the day before you died. And so it's taxed at 54%. So even if you have your kids on your RSPs as the beneficiaries, your kids will get the after-tax amount, or they'll get the full amount and then they have to pay the tax on it after once your estate closes. Okay, so lots of people don't realize that. The other thing about RSPs is at age 71, so this is what happens with a lot of people sort of in their 60s that I talk to. They've got these big RSP accounts and they're really hesitant. They don't want to pull any money out because they know if they pull money out of their RSP, they have to pay income tax on it. So they go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But then I'm like, okay, well, if you die though, you're paying 54% tax. But anyways, so what happens when you turn 71, the government says, hey, you've never paid any income tax on this money your entire life. You have to start taking money out now. And there's a calculation and it gets converted to a RIF, a registered retirement income fund, and they force you to start taking a minimum out. So this forces an income in retirement from age 71 onwards. And it's a calculation based on how much you have in the RSP and how old you are. Okay. There's also the old school, not old school, these are great, TFSA, tax-free savings accounts. They're awesome. Right now, you can only have about $95,000 worth of contribution room as long as you've been 18 since 2008 or whenever they came out. And you're going to be able to put in about another 7K per year. The government's changed this number all the time. Like last year it was $6,500. This year it was 7. The year Stephen Harper was trying to get reelected, he made it 10. So once these are full and they're growing, that's just kind of it. Then you're stuck in non-registered, which aren't taxed very efficiently. The last thing on this side is, I'm gonna have some paper here. Oops. Is CPP. So when you're self-employed, you're considered to be both the employer plus the employee. Okay, so that means you're on the hook for being both halves of CPP. If you weren't self-employed and you had a regular job and you worked for Walmart, Walmart would pay the employer half of CPP and you would pay the employee half of CPP. CPP stands for Canada Pension Plan. Right now, as long as you make about 60K per year, you're maxing out your CPP and you have to pay $7,500 per year into this. Okay. Do I have to admit people? There we go. Okay. What's happening though is starting in 2025, next year, this is going up to 10K per year. All right. So for the average agent, who I think most of them are doing at least 60K a year or more, you're going to have to start now calculating that you have to have 10K to put in the CPP. People will say to me, Joe, I'm not paying CPP. I know I'm not. You are. When you file your sole proprietor income taxes and your accountant says, hey, you owe 40 grand in taxes this year, this is just part of it. It's built in there. Your accountant just hasn't broken it out. But when you pay your taxes, your CPP contributions are being made. I'm not, pardon me, pro CPP or against CPP. I just want people to understand this. The other thing that you have to understand about CPP, well, that's a really crappy bracket, is again, what happens when you die. So if you die with a spouse, they're going to get less than about 50% of your CPP, but only up to their maximum. So if your spouse is already getting 100% of their CPP and you pass away, they don't get any more. Right? So your CPP then just stays in the CPP, the pension fund, and that's it. If you die with no spouse, your estate gets nothing. So you can contribute to CPP your whole life. If you never make a withdrawal from it, you die without a spouse, you'll get your estate will get $2,500 to help with funeral costs. But otherwise, all your other contributions to it over the lifetime just kind of goes away. There's nothing wrong with CPP. It's well funded, it's well managed, it's meant to keep Canadians out of poverty. The only way you can get CPP is if you've worked and you've contributed to it. It is not OAS. I don't even really talk about OAS in this conversation. Am I good so far? Thumbs up, Katelyn? Yeah? Okay. All right. Let's chat about your life now with a PREC. All right. So when I talk to new agents that are new to being an incorporated business owner, the hardest thing that they struggle with is they don't understand that now there's a differentiation between them and their business. So you're still up here selling houses and you're still making money, but the money doesn't come to you personally anymore. So you're an agent, right? But you are now also a shareholder of your corporation. And those are two separate entities. Your PREC, like the agent has its own SIN number, your PREC has its own BIN number, a business identification number. And you really have to understand that these are separate entities in the eyes of the law and the CRA. So the money now goes into a corporate bank account. Okay, so it bypasses you and it goes into your corporate bank account. A couple of things about PRECs that are different from what I would call a regular corporation is that it is only the licensed real estate agent that can be what's called the equity or voting shareholder. So you can't share your PREC with other business partners. You can have family members on as shareholders, but they are what are called non-voting shareholders. And that impacts how we pay dividends to them. So example, my husband owns an HVAC company. If he owned the HVAC company and he had two business partners, they could each own a third, and a third of his corporation, and they would be equal shareholders of it. That's not an option for the PREC. And this impacts things for estate planning. So you can't sell your PREC later on. Well, you could, but no one's going to buy it. Because it's only the licensed real estate agent. In husband and wife teams, which is common in the industry, technically, depending on how you're splitting your deals, each agent needs to have their own PREC. This is an issue, okay? One of the other restrictions to PRECs, it is only money from the commissions of real estate that can go into any PREC investments. So if you're a real estate agent that has other sources of income, like I was just talking to Leigh today, and she does tax filing services on the side, you can't funnel any other sources of income through here. It's really just an agreement between you and your brokerage, where now your brokerage just writes your commission checks to your corporation. Okay? So why would we do this then? Let's say you make 250K gross commission income in a year. 1 second. There we go. Okay. And you have 50K in expenses, right? You're paying for staging materials, photographers, marketing costs, whatever it is you're doing. And you also need 100K to live your life. You've got kids in sports, you got to buy groceries. That's what you do. So this leaves $100,000 left over. This is what is called a retained earning. Okay. And this is taxed at 12%. That's the beauty of a corporation. Whereas in this scenario, if you made 250K, you wrote off some expenses, all of it, for the most part, is taxed at various tax rates between 30 and 54%. So PRECs only work for people that are going to have retained earnings. One of my biggest beefs in the industry is that when the PRECs first came out, accountants, lawyers, brokerage owners said, oh, if you're a top performer and you make 250K or more than a year, you should have a PREC. That's not the case. I know agents that make $600,000 in a year, but they spend $700,000 and there's no retained earnings. So there's no point in having a corporation unless you're gonna have money left over. Same thing as if you're an agent and you're making 60K a year, but you're not taking any of it out of the corporation, it's all just savings, it might make sense to have a PREC. So then the next question usually is, okay, great. How do I get this $100,000 out to live my life, right? I still got to eat. So again, you have some choices here. So how does the 100K for lifestyle come out of the corporation? You have some choices. You can pay yourself as though you are an employee of your corporation. This is called taking a salary. This is going to give you T4 income. You're going to get that 18% RRSP contribution room, depending on how much you take out, and you still have to pay CPP. Only now, your PREC is your employer, and they're paying the employer portion of CPP, and you are paying the employee portion of CPP. The big benefit of this, smiley face, is this is now an expense to the corporation, because this is a business. The CRA recognizes that businesses can't operate unless they have employees. So if they have employees, that's payroll and that's an expense. Whereas before, if you took this 100K to live your life, there was no added benefit to doing that. You were just getting taxed and paying it. So depending on how much you take out, you are taxed the same way basis over here. So if you only take 50K out, you're taxed in a lower tax bracket. If you take 200,000 out, you're taxed appropriately. All right. The other way you can pay yourself is as though you are a shareholder. And this is called taking a dividend. This gives you, and this is viewed in the eyes of the CRA as taking profits from the corporation. So the CRA is like, yay, congratulations, shareholder, you ran a profitable business. You can take some of those profits out and pay yourself a dividend. This gives you T5 income, and you do not get any RSP contribution room because this is not viewed as what's called earned income. And you do not pay CPP on this. All right. Second to take a drink. So the question is, sorry, I lost my thought there. So yeah, so if you're just taking profits, this is not viewed as earned income. So depending on where you're at and what you need, where this can hold you back sometimes is, for example, when COVID happened and there was was it CERB? For business owners like myself that have only ever really paid ourselves dividends, we technically didn't have any earned income, so we didn't qualify for CERB. Because one of the qualifications with CERB was how much T4 income do you have? When you're applying for disability insurance, most insurance companies do your disability insurance based on T4 income. Qualifying for mortgages or lending. There are lenders that will look at dividend income, absolutely, but you have to have a PREC for a long time. It has to be stable income. The story has to make sense. So most of them are going to prefer T4 income. So this choice, you can do a mix of both. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a mix of both. And you decide when you start filing your taxes. So go about, live your life, take your money out of your corporation as you need. You literally just e-transfer it to your personal bank account. And at the end of the year, your accountant's going to go, okay, you took $100,000 out of your corporation. Maybe we're going to do 50K as a salary this year, pay the 30%, and 50K as a dividend. From a tax perspective, if you make less than 500K in a year, you can take the taxes are the same. Sorry, you make less than 500K in a year, the taxes are the same. There's a rule called integration that makes it so that business owners, whether they pay themselves a salary or a dividend, are going to be taxed at the same sort of way. Whereas if you make more than 500K in a year of active business income, you can take your first 50K a year out as what's called an eligible dividend and pay no tax on it. So there are some tax planning strategies there depending on what your kind of gross commission income is. So you wouldn't do a dividend over salary for a tax reason. For the most part, it all comes out in the wash to be the same, but there's some planning opportunities here. The other part of this is like, okay, so what do I do with this $100,000? I've got some retained earnings in there. What do I do with it? This is where I find most agents today are kind of sitting on either cash in their bank account or they've just kind of thrown it in a GIC. I see very, very few agents that have actually taken this and invested it. So all we do is we open up what's called a corporate investment account. It's almost the same application as if you open up an RSP or a TFSA, only it's owned by the corporation, and we put the 100K in it. You can invest in the exact same things you're used to investing in. You like mutual funds, you like stocks, you like GICs, whatever it is that you're used to investing in, you just put them in a corporate investment account and away you go. What you have to understand, though, is how these investments are taxed inside of a corporate investment account is different than how they're taxed over here. So passive income. So passive income would be a GIC, would be private mortgage lending, would be rental income, mortgage investment corps. They're all taxed at about 50%. So when you put your GIC inside of a corporate investment account and you say, oh, it's getting 5%, it's not. That's right. There's like a really, really long, convoluted way about how taxable income is taxed, and you can recapture some of it. But just high level, just know that corporate investments are not taxed very favorably on a passive side. So if you want GICs as part of your portfolio, they're going to do better in the RSP side. Okay, same as the private mortgage lending or investments. Some other things we can put in here are corporately owned insurance policies. So the corporation can own the policy, so it's paying premiums at a much lower rate than if you took the money out to pay the premiums personally. And if it's a permanent life insurance policy that pays dividends, so I don't know if any of you have heard of a whole life, not universal life. I'm not talking about universal life. I'm not talking about a whole life or a participating life insurance policy. They grow typically around 5% per year. This grows tax-free inside the corporation. So it's really beneficial to make sure you have some sort of permanent life insurance policy inside of the corporate investments as part of your investment strategy, because that's tax-free growth, whereas all the other investment opportunity. Oh, I just got the notification that my internet's unstable again. No,
You're good now.
good. Okay. Still good, Caitlin? Okay. All right. All right. So that one of the other then questions I get is about, what do I do with rental properties? Holding companies. Does anyone have any questions so far? I feel weird that I'm just like ranting and rambling, and it's really weird. That's why I like doing these presentations in person, because then I can like hear things, or right now I'm just going. No? Good?
No questions yet.
Okay. All right. This is what is called, or people are like off barfing to the side because they realize how much tax we pay in Canada. Okay, this is what is called an operating company, okay? There's active business income going in, there's active expenses going out. It's called an operating company. What we do later on, once you go to retire or once we start doing some planning, is we move money, usually from an operating company to what's called a holding company. And remember I said you can have your spouse and kids as shareholders up here? What we can do then is you move your money from an operating company to a holding company, and then we can, after age 65, start doing some income splitting with that, so you can start paying your spouse from it. And this is where rental properties usually come in. I'm running out of paper here. So let's say you own 3 rental properties personally right now. You've got a duplex and a single unit, a triplex, whatever you got going on. One of the questions I'll get is, Joe, should I move these personally owned rental properties inside of a corporation? It's a conversation. I usually spend a lot of time with my clients talking about this. Right now, because of the upcoming changes to capital gains tax rules, I would not suggest it. But what you have to understand is that if you do move properties personally into a holding company, you have to sell them from you personally to the corporation, because the corporation is a separate entity. So you're going to pay your land transfer taxes. Okay. And you have to sell them at fair market value. So, which means that if there's mortgages on these property, the corporation has to have the credit to then purchase those properties from you personally. So you're still going to personally guarantee them. Right now, because PRECs are so new, even if you were someone that formed a PREC the second it came out in October of 2020, you've only filed 2 corporate tax years. So it doesn't have the credit history to qualify for its own mortgages. When I do this presentation 10 years from now, it's going to be a different conversation, because a lot of PRECs are going to have a lot more retained earnings in them. They're going to have credit history. There's going to be a lot more going on with them. But for the most part right now, oh, I see some chat things there. No. Good.
It said, what should you do
Okay,
with your PREC when I want to retire?
great question. Okay, so what, like, ideally what the whole point of having a PREC is you've retained these earnings over the lifetime of you've built them up here, you've got your investments in here, you've been investing, you're growing. Let's say you've got $1 million in here and you're ready to hang up your hat. This now, it essentially is just meant to replace your RSP and your TFSA. This is now your pension. These are now your savings, and you just dividend yourself out or pay yourself out of your PREC as needed in retirement. And that's what we do. Like when I have my clients with planning, is my favorite question, and my clients get to me, is like, what's the exit strategy? How are we getting out of this later? So you have $1 million in here. We now put $1 million into a holding company, and you say, you know what? I need 50 grand a year to live off of in retirement because I paid into CPP my whole life and my wife has a pension. So this is what we need. You just start taking out what you need every year. And the beauty of having the corporate investments is that there's no forced RIF minimums. If you have $1 million in your holding company and you don't ever need to withdraw from it, you just keep it investing and it just keeps growing. It becomes part of your estate. If you find out you're terminally ill and you've got 6 months to live and you want to go all out and blow $1 million, you take it out, you pay the taxes, and you're good to go. So you have a lot of choice with how you spend this money. It's a terrible way to spell choice, and how it goes out. And like I said, you can do income splitting after age 65 with your spouse. So you can start taking some of this money and paying your spouse from it as well. The beautiful part about having money inside of a corporation is that, say you as the agent, you die, okay? If your wife or spouse and kids or whatever are shareholders of a corporation, this $1 million still stays at preserving your wealth. Whereas if you have $1 million over here, and you die, it's just gonna keep telling me so stable. Good. Okay. And you die, it rarely transcends the next generation. It gets just taxed a lot. All right. So that's it. So what do you do when you retire? I don't know. It depends on your personal situation. It depends on where you're getting your money from in retire. But essentially, and I'm doing a presentation tomorrow called about real estate to retirement. How do I retire? And real estate agents, when I talk to them, some say, the second I don't have to sell another house, I am out. And they will retire that the second that they can. Some agents say, I'm going to go into the grave with an offer in my hand because I love it or I need to, or whatever the situation is. Some, I help them with succession strategies. So, you know what, Joe, over the next 10 years, I'd like to get down to a 50% capacity and have 2 buyer agents under me, and then just manage my book, and then maybe sell my client lists to the agents that I've taught. So that's kind of what I do as a planning, is I answer that question, what do you do with retire? But at high level, the benefit, have the corporate investments, and they're just going to survive longer than if they didn't. Cool. Good, Caitlin? Yes. Caitlin, you're the only face that I can see. So
Yeah, you're all good.
yeah. Okay, camera, and go back to my PowerPoint presentation. Where were we? All right. So that's kind of a high level the difference between a sole proprietor and incorporated business owner or having a corporation. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. For those of you on the call who do not currently have a PREC, one of the questions I often get is, how much does this cost to set up? You're going to have to hire a lawyer to form what are called your articles of incorporation and register your corporation for you. Lawyer fees vary anywhere from $2,500 to 45, call it $3,000. It's going to cost you about $3,000 one time to form the corporation. And then you need an accountant to file your corporate taxes. So this is not something you can do at HR&R Block. And to file corporate taxes, regardless of how simple it is, even if you make no money, you still have to file corporate taxes. And it's going to cost you, again, depending on the accountant, probably about $3,000 a year. I mentioned earlier, you should also have a bookkeeper. And the reason is that corporations are held to a higher standard of accounting through something called GAAP, the generally approved accounting principles. So bookkeepers you have to have profit and loss statements. Corporations are audited a lot more. So I always recommend that once you have a PREC, fork over the money, get a monthly bookkeeper, pay a proper bookkeeper, maybe talk to your accountant, see if their firm offers that, and just stop doing it yourself. You're going to run into an issue. The other thing I'm just
sorry to
going to kind of
interrupt you.
just,
Are you meant
yeah.
to show your screen right now? Because we can't see your new
Oh,
screen.
LOL. Sorry. Yes, I was meant to be
I didn't
sharing
know
my
if you
screen.
were or not. I just didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Thank
that's a
you.
good point about bookkeeping. I think it's a good idea to hire somebody professional that, real estate agents are not always the most organized. So that makes sense.
And when you're a sole proprietor, you can kind of get away. Sorry, I'm going to pull my presentation here with a lot more, but on the corporation side, not so much. And I'm also going to say from the accountants that I speak to, the general feeling is PRECs are, your industry doesn't exactly have the best reputation for being compliant with the CRA. Sorry, can you guys screen now? Yes, good. I'll move this out of the way.
All good.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, being compliant with the CRA, and now we've just let you all have corporations. So they're going to let the corporations run for a couple years. And I would anticipate that in 2025, 2026, there's going to be like a task force going out and auditing these things. So I just be on the right side. It really forces you have to actually start acting like a business owner. And I don't mean that in like a cranky way, but I don't know. My opinion is that real estate agents are professionals, and you're professionals at helping people buy and sell houses. And that's what you should be focusing on, and not being a part-time accountant and bookkeeper at the same time. And because you don't know once you get into a corporation, you're just opening yourself up to some more issues there. Okay, so I've got 2 case studies I'm going to go through with you in a second. But before I get to the case studies, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how my firm works. So like I said, we build financial plans. What's in a plan? We look at your financial management, your asset management. We're going to look at all the risks to your plan. We're going to work with your accountant on tax planning. If the focus is retirement planning, we're going to go there, but we'll bring it up. And then estate planning too. So if you have these rental properties, how are you going to get them to your kids? How are you going to sell them? What's the exit strategy? If you own, I'm dealing with a guy right now. He owns 4 rental properties, one 50-50 with his best friend, one 50-50 with his real estate partner, and the other 2, a third, and a third with his brothers. And so my conversation with him is around, and they're young and they're making good money and everything's going great. But I was just like, okay, well, what happens when your best friend gets a divorce, say, for example, because he's married? Then he needs to, that's an asset of his. He has to pay his ex-wife out 50% of it. What are you guys going to do? What happens if your best friend passes away? You're now a 50% business owner with his wife. How are you going to pay out her half of it? Let's flash forward 30 years from now. You guys are all in your 60s and you don't need this property anymore. You want the cash and you want to sell, but one of your brothers does not. He wants to keep the property because he still needs the passive income. So all these kinds of questions that people don't think about when they start owning physical real estate. Or conversation with the guy, he's got 3 investment properties and he's got 3 kids. And he's like, I'm just going to give each of my kids an investment property in my will. Great. But it's not going to work out that way. Are all 3 of those properties worth the exact same thing? And will they be worth the exact same thing 40 years from now when your kids get them? What if your 3 kids, they don't want it? What if your daughter moves to Europe? She doesn't want a triplex in Milton. like, so what does this really look like? And so that's kind of when I say estate planning, that's kind of conversations we have. So how I get paid, so I'm a broker. I can deal with sort of any companies from an investment insurance standpoint. And what I started to do mid last year, because I build these comprehensive plans, and it takes my team and I about 25 to 30 hours of work to build the plan and go through the 5 phases of the planning process. So I just charge a one-time flat fee of $2,500. And we go through the whole planning program and we have your plan built for you. This fee is written off as a business expense. And then if we continue to work together after that, like you move some investments over, we have some stuff we implement, we can certainly do that. But what I found when I first started with working with real estate agents is they come to a presentation, say, oh my gosh, Joe, love it, want to work with you, but all my investments are with my brother-in-law at Sun Life, or I work with the guy at TD and he feeds me deals, right? So I've got all my investments with him and he sends me 6 deals a year. I can't move my investments, but he doesn't know anything about, anyone at the bank doesn't know anything about corporate planning. Unless you're in the high net worth market and you've got over 5 or 10 million, you're not getting corporate planning. Oh, chat question. Ooh, that's a good question. Okay. What are the tax implications when a child inherits a parent's property? So let's talk about a cottage. Okay. So cottage, rental property, anything that's not the primary residence. The estate is on the hook for paying the capital gains tax owing on it. So you can write in your will, I want my child to inherit the family cottage. Great. But as your estate gets settled, if you bought the cottage back in the 1980s for 50 grand and now it's up in the Muskokas and it's worth $1 million, there's going to be a 6-figure tax bill associated with that. And if your estate does not have that money to pay that capital gains tax bill, or your kid doesn't have the money to pay the capital gains tax bill, the property is sold. Same with rental properties. And that's the issue when, so what do you do if you have one child and one rental property? You can slowly put them on title over the course of 10 years and sell them 10%. They pay a small capital gain at the time, sell them 50%. They pay more capital gains and you're giving up your ownership. So that spreads the capital gains tax bill out over a long period of time. So I'll answer that in a second. So that's what happens. If it's not the primary residence, it's any other property, there's a capital gains tax bill owed on it. Okay. And so we have to make sure that there's enough money in your estate to pay that capital gains tax bill so that the child can actually keep the property. No matter what province the realtor is in that you're working. For me, I'm only licensed in Ontario. So I'm in Ottawa right now. There's a lot of agents that are in Quebec. I can't really help them. Quebec is, we joke in Ottawa, it's like, we call it Quebexico. It's a whole other set of rules over there. So I'm anywhere in Ontario. And so I go to the GTA often. I'm hanging there twice in May. I'm starting to work with all different boards. I'm flying out to Thunder Bay in September to work with their board. So Ontario. Internet is unstable. Capital gains is paid the year the parent passes. It is paid, I will confirm this with an accountant, it is paid when the CRA settles the estate. So someone dies, probate is triggered, usually. All of depends on if there's a spouse or not, or how complicated the estate is. There's a terminal tax bill that has to be filed. Right now, the CRA is running at about 36 months. They're really behind. So and that's where like that estate planning piece, depending on where you're at in your life, is really, really important. And how simple you want your estate to be for your kids or your beneficiaries. Okay, because it's not a quick and simple process by any means. Capital gains still applies if it's the parent. No, so it does not apply to primary residence at all. Primary residence, tax-free still in Canada currently. Let's not jinx it. And that's why I was really specific about a secondary, a cottage or an investment property or a personal use property. It does not apply to primary residence. These are good questions. Yay, I like questions so much better than me just talking. All right. So let's go through a couple. Oh, you guys, I'm assuming you can just see the chat box and not my actual screen. Okay, case studies. So Leo and Lori. Oh, I missed a slide. Here we go. So Leo, at the time I met him, he was 58. He'd been doing this full time for 15 years. He had planned to work for another 5 years. His It was full. Had a bit of unused RSP room, no debt, so his primary residence was paid off. Like, he has no rental properties. And he had $150K from his HELOC to invest in a private mortgage deal. He's a team, and they do $600K per year. And at the time I met him, he had about $300,000 retained in his PREC bank account. So trying to talk to me, I feel like having $300,000 in a bank account probably is a good thing. Second, what if the vacation investment in you? That is a good question. And that is counted by our question. I have clients with Florida properties, and for my cover, I defer out for those, but they are taxed a lot, and there's capital gains on them. I have a client that owns 2 investment.
I think we lost her.
Do we lose her altogether or just video?
No, it looks like she left. Oh, no.
Okay. Okay, she'll probably come back. If anyone has questions, good time to put them in the chat now and we can get those answered as well. I'm sure she was about to wind down soon anyways. So.
Sorry.
But super interesting.
Really interesting. Yeah, I liked her drawings. There she is again.
Yeah, it's interesting because Katelyn's on a PREC herself, and
Yeah.
then I'm not, because I'm a spender. So like Joanne was saying, like if you spend it and invest it, PRECs are not always for everybody, right? So it just depends on you as a person and kind of what your you know, lifestyle strategy is for your retirement and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I
We
do
can-
have some pictures of the drawings
here.
that I've taken, but I'm also recording this session too for you guys, so we'll get to that. But yeah, like Carly said, I have a PREC myself and I really enjoy it, but I'm also, yeah, I'm a big saver of my money. Let's see if I've got her there.
Okay, I'm here.
Hey,
There we are.
Joanne.
Hi, I'm here. Okay. Sorry about that. So, and I can give you, yeah, this is recorded. I can give you copies of the drawing. That's not proprietary or anything. So I can scan and upload a copy of it and send it to you guys after as well. So don't sweat that. Okay.
Sounds good.
So we'll try and get through this case study here real quick. Before I get cut out again. You still there? Okay. All right. So his taxes were paid up to date, and his accountant had advised him to take $12K a month from his PREC, $10K for him and $2K for his wife. So he had his wife on salary. I feel weird that I can't. Hold on a second. All right. I'm just super paranoid that it's just going to cut out again, and I'm going to be sitting here talking to myself. So my assistant will message me. She's on this call too if we lose each other. Okay. All right. So his wife, Lori, so a couple of years older than him, and this is important. So she's retired with a reduced pension. She was in healthcare, and she wanted to be home to look after their grandkid. They just had a grandson. Their daughter's pregnant with another one. And being with their grandkids was like a top priority to them. She was not collecting CPP. So you can start collecting CPP as early as age 60 or as late as age 71. So I do a lot of questions for people around when should I collect it? How should I collect it? Blah, blah, blah. Her TFSA was full and her pension had used up most of her RSP room. So that was kind of where they were at. And why his questions for me was, when should she be collecting her CPP? He's like, she's 63. Should we do it now? When shouldn't we? All that. And he's like, I've got this 300K. What should I do with it? And then when can he retire? So it was funny how the conversation evolved. When I first talked to him, he was like, this is great. I'm going to do this for another 5-10 years. I love my team. But then, the grandkids are on the scene. He's like, maybe I'd like to be home with them more now, but I'm still young. He's like, just what's realistic? And he was actually really mad because they were paying a lot of tax. He's like, I got a PREC, so I didn't have to pay tax, but I feel like my tax bill was really big. So I work in phases. So the way I work with my clients, we do a phase 1, like a discovery meeting. So where are you at? What are your goals? What do you need help with? And I want to see if I can actually help you. And then if at that point we agree to work together, we're going to send you a letter of engagement that outlines exactly what we're going to do for you with timelines on it. So from the time a client hires me until they get all the answers to their questions, their financial plan delivered is about 6 weeks. I can go as fast or slow, but I rely on clients and meet with us. You pay the fee. And then what I do is I send my clients a secure link with a list of all their statements. And I tell you upload everything here. So I'm going to ask for insurance policies, investment policies, mortgage statements, PREC bank accounts, the articles of incorporation, and we're going to look at everything. So it's not just the PREC, it's the whole big picture. And that's really, really important. Then what I do is we go in and we do an audit. So we're going to look at everything. And then I build you a net worksheet and we're going to get on a Zoom call for 30 minutes. And I said to Leo and Larry, okay, I've had a quick look at everything that you gave me. And this is what we found. He had investments in insurance all over the place. And none of it was invested according to his risk tolerance and goals. Like he had investments, I want like 6 different institutions. He was at like Edward Jones, Fidelity, CIBC, TD. He had his own Wealthsimple account. And it was just like a real hodgepodge. He's like, yeah, I don't know. That it just happened. So I'm like, okay. And when I looked at his cash flow and I actually talked to him and his wife, okay, look, tell me about your lifestyle. What do you guys need to live every month? They really only needed about $6,000 a month, right? They're kind of in their 60s, the mortgage is paid off, they live within their means, they're not big travelers, they're just kind of hanging at home with the grandkids, but yet he was taking $12,000 a month from his PREC. And that's how the conversation with his accountant went. The accountant set up the PREC, accountant said, how much money do you need? He says, I don't know, $120,000 a year, because that's how much he was getting net before he had his PREC, so that's how much he thought he needed, and that's why he was paying too much tax. And then also when I looked at his cash flow, he's a man of faith, and he was giving out 10% of his earnings to the church every month, which is a significant donation towards his cash flow, which he was taking out. So we had a really good chat about that. And then we leave that call and then my team goes to work and we build your plan. So your plan is 2 documents. One, we use a software where we can build out all these strategies for you. So it's a proprietary software, as well as I type up written notes. And so I said, look, you need to stop pulling $12,000 a month from the PREC. Like retain it up there, invest it. You're paying too much tax because you're still drawing a salary of $120,000 a year when you only need a salary of half of that, about $60,000 a year. And we did the CPP analysis for them. And her CPP, if she started it right now at age 63, was about $900 a month. And longevity does not run in her family. She has a history of Alzheimer's and breast cancer in her family. And she had concerns that, I mean, she's perfectly healthy right now, but she had concerns that she wasn't, going to be living into her 90s. And so we said, you know what, pull this now. That's $900 a month. CPP is taxable income that you can draw into your household that you've really kind of already paid for and retain that in the corporation instead. We did all new portfolios for him. Oh, that should be started, not stated. Started some corporate investments for him for that $300,000. We left about $100,000 in his corporate bank account for his operating expenses. And then we invested the other $200,000. And what we did with his insurance was he had quite a few policies and he had some personally owned ones that weren't super efficient. They were with a company that they weren't structured very well. So we did put one inside of his corporation. And what we're doing right now is we're addressing his charitable giving. So once you have a corporation, there's some charitable giving strategies that you can do that are very tax efficient for the corporation, as well as for the beneficiaries. The government really wants to encourage people to contribute to charities. And so we're looking at that right there. And just that, like we didn't do anything super crazy. We just said, hey, let's move these buckets. Let's start this, take some money from there instead. And it saved about $35,000 in taxes every year, just by sort of moving things around. Last case study, Sharon. So, and this is a really common scenario. 67, single, full-time agent. She's been doing this for forever. She has 2 adult children that do work in the business with her in varying capacities, and steady Eddie producer. She's doing $300 to $400 a year every year. She was not collecting CPP. So she could have started collecting at age 60, 7 years out. She was not collecting it. And her big stress was she has no other sources of income. She does not have a pension. She does not have a spouse. Like she is solo. She did have one investment property that she'd bought in, I want to say just like 2-3 years before she met me. And it was in red because of the variable interest rates. Really common with agents, right? Went on variable when rates were low. They started climbing. You kept them variable. And so she was kind of stressing about that. Her RSPs were max. She had about $500,000 in there. She had a little bit in a TFSA, and she did have a PREC with about $250,000 in the bank account. No personal debt, taxes were paid. The investment property did have a mortgage on it, and she was working with someone at CIBC. So she came to me and she's like, Joe, I'm just not confident with investments. And her words were, she's like, I really like the guy I deal with at the bank. He's lovely, but I feel like he kind of talks over my head. I don't really know what he's talking about. I just sign what he tells me to sign, but I'm 67 now. Like the investments have dropped, but I don't know, can I afford them to drop? Like And she said she didn't want to feel stupid. That was like a big thing for her. She's like, I'm 67. Oh my gosh, when can I retire? She's like, am I going to be doing this for forever? I only have, 500K in RSPs. Is that enough? Do I sell the rental property? And then this question about transitioning the business to her adult children. So she has 2 kids. One is single, will always be single, has no kids, also has another job, kind of does this part-time with her. And then her other child, married to 1 kid, and is full-time in the business with her. So she's like, how do I make things equal? One's full-time with me, one kind of not really. And then she has a granddaughter, and she super, and they will only have one granddaughter, that she take care of the granddaughter. So again, all right, no problem. She hired us. I said, give me all your stuff. Let's have a look at it. We met. And when we started reading everything, she was paying about 15 grand a year in various personally owned insurance products, which that's not a lot, but it was why. And she's like, oh, I had a friend that worked for Sun Life, so I bought this policy there. And then I've got my best friend's husband works for Cooperator, so I got this from him. And just kind of over the years, she just sort of accumulated these policies, and she's like, I don't even know what they do. Her on cash flow, she was actually spending way more than she thought. Her initial verbiage to me was, I'm single, I behave like a pensioner, I don't travel, I live a very modest lifestyle. But when we actually dug into it, she was spending probably about 30% more than what she thought she was. And though her investments were at the bank, they weren't being actively managed, and they were outside of her risk tolerance. So that was kind of an issue for her. So her plan, what we did for her is I said, look, you got to stop pulling money from your PREC and start pulling from your RSP. And so remember, I said she has $500,000 in her RSP. She is single, and she's 67. Well, she was 68 by the time we finished the plan. I was like, so within the next 3 years, you're going to be forced to start riffing this out. And if you, for some reason, she's super healthy. I was like, if you, for some reason, pass away, this is all getting taxed at 54%. Whereas if you retain it in your PREC, her sons are non-voting shareholders on her PREC, it can at least kind of stay intact. We did do the analysis and told her to start collecting CPP. And we told her to do dividends, not salary, because now she's collecting CPP. So really the only difference between a dividend and a salary is CPP. I'm like, you really just like stop contributing it to this point. You don't need it anymore. Go dividends. We did new portfolios for her. We got some corporate investments going. And even though she was 68, she was 69 by the time the policies got approved. We did new life insurance. We kept some of it. We did the analysis that says, how much do you actually need and why? If you keep the investment property, this is the capital gains tax bill. She really wanted her granddaughter to get something when she passed away, blah, blah, blah. So what do you need? And we were able to get her cheaper insurance, even though she was older, and it saved her about 8 grand a year and canceled a bunch of the other stuff. And we did start an RESP for her granddaughter. So I'm trying to meet with her adult children about their planning. And the rental property is an ongoing conversation. I think I talk with her once a quarter. She's like, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to sell it. I'm going to keep it. So when the new capital gains tax rules came out the other day, she called and we chatted. So I don't know. It's a work in progress. So that's kind of it. Thank you. Hopefully you guys are all still there. Yeah.
Still here.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know we had some technical difficulties, but it's okay.
I'm really, yeah.
We got a lot out of it. I know Dawn said that you guys can email us the drawing, so I can actually email that to everybody that attended as well if you guys want. I don't see any other questions.
My phone. Okay. Yeah, I'll take a picture of this and I'll send it to everyone. So, or I'll just get Dawn to send it to you,
Awesome.
and we'll go.
Thank you so
Good.
much, Joanne. Thanks, Dawn, for being on the side there too. That's
All
awesome.
right, awesome, guys.
Really appreciate it. And I'll send out a recording to everybody as well. And it'll probably be on our YouTube channel too. So if everyone wants a quick link to it, I'll put it up there too.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye, guys.